React Components is one of the most important topics for beginners wanting to learn React. A component is one of the core building blocks of React. In other words, we can say that every application you will develop in React consists of parts called components. Components make the task of creating user interfaces much easier. You can break a user interface into several individual parts called components and work on them independently, merging them all into one parent component that will be your final user interface. That's why today we are digging deeper to learn how they can be integrated into React. First of all, we need to know that there are two different types of components. We have a functional component and a class component. The first thing that distinguishes them is the way they are constructed. If we take a look at the functional component, you will notice that they aren't much different than just a plain JavaScript function. The difference with a normal JavaScript function is that they start with an uppercase letter and not camel case, and they can return JSX elements. A functional component can also accept props as an argument, which stands for element properties. A class component, on the other hand, requires you to extend from React, which gives us access to functions like component did mount, component did update, and component will unmount. This means that we can use the Lifecycle method inside a class component. A class component also has a render method, which is used to return a JSX, while a functional component cannot use a render method. The functional components are basically known as stateless components, as they simply accept data and display them in some form that they are mainly responsible for rendering UI. That was till 2019 when React version 16.8 was released. Now you can make a functional component stateful by easily integrating hooks like in this example. First, you will need to import the hook function that you will want to use. In this case, I am using useState, which you will probably see the most when you read React code. Just to let you know what hooks are, they are functions that let you hook into React state or lifecycle of a function component. They can only be called inside React function components. There's a list of built-in hooks in React, but the most important one will be the useState function. The class component on the other side is known as a stateful component because it can independently implement logic and state. In a class component, you will mostly use a constructor and a state object. The constructor here is used to store state and will be only called when a component gets initiated. The super function refers to the parent constructor function here. This function needs to be implemented every time we define a constructor. This keyword here refers, like in the other object-oriented programming languages, to the object in which it is located. Now let's move to another important part of it, which is rendering components. When it comes to rendering, both types work the same. To render them, we write the following code. In the first line, we have created a const variable and we have set this to HTML ID named root. This can be any HTML element holding the ID root. Then we move on, adding the render method to the variable that we have created. Inside the render method, we write the component in HTML tags. At the first look, this seems like an HTML element, but there is a slight difference. In the beginning, I told you that when we define a component, we type the first letter of the component in capital case. Since we don't have an HTML tag that starts with a capital letter, this can be distinguished. Another thing that we need to know about components in React is that we can use a component in a different file by adding export default and the name of the component. So we can make sure that this component can be accessed from another files as well. This works for both types the same. So this was my tutorial on React components. If this video was helpful, please leave a like, and if you want to see more of this kind of videos, you can press the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.